Welcome everyone to 5 Minutes Discovery Channel. War situation between Russia and Ukraine. Zelensky wants China to participate in Ukraine peace talks, citing influence on Russia. China believes that Russia's defeat in the war in Ukraine will be a victory for America and the West, and they want to find a balance between the two sides. That's why I want to see China participate in the peace summit, said Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on May 17. Mr. Zelensky said Chinese leader Xi Jinping assured him in a phone call that Beijing supported Ukraine's territorial integrity, although he did not specify when the exchange took place. Mr. Zelensky's comments were reported released when Russian President Vladimir Putin visited China on May 16 to 17. The leaders of Russia and China held talks and signed a joint statement on deepening the comprehensive strategic partnership in cooperation for a new era. In addition to China, Mr. Zelensky also called on South Tone countries, a term for developing countries, to attend the conference. Not sending a representative to attend will be a public reaction to show that you want Russia to win, even though everyone says we want peace, the Ukrainian president said. According to him, the parties can reach consensus on 3 issues at the conference in Switzerland, including ensuring freedom of navigation in the Black Sea for Ukraine to export grain to enhance global food security, calling for an end to attacks on the agency, energy infrastructure, and bringing back thousands of Ukrainian children in Russia. If the majority of participating countries reach consensus on these 3 steps, Russia will no longer hinder us, the Ukrainian president emphasized. China has not yet responded to the Ukrainian president's call. Beijing previously said that there is still a lot of work to be done before the conference in Switzerland. The war in Ukraine has entered its 3rd year and shows no signs of cooling down, with neither Kiev nor Moscow intending to sit in negotiation table. More than a year ago, China launched a 12-point peace plan with contents such as calling for a ceasefire, resuming peace negotiations, avoiding nuclear risks, and reducing the impact of the crisis on the world economy, and address humanitarian issues. China has not committed to participating in the event, although the country's ambassador to Switzerland Wang Shiting said in March that Beijing was considering participating. So far, Russia has not was represented at any of the 4 rounds of closed international peace negotiations that took place and will not be present at this round. China attended a meeting hosted by increasingly close strategic partner Saudi Arabia. During a recent 6-day trip to Europe, Mr. Xi rejected accusations that his country had supported Russia's war in Ukraine, saying China was opposed to using the Ukraine crisis to seduce, abandon responsibility, or defame third countries and incite a new Cold Wave war. However, he joined French President Emmanuel Macron in calling for a global Olympic truce, which would see a pause in fighting in all conflicts during the upcoming Summer Olympics in Paris. However, Zelensky expressed skepticism about the proposed ceasefire, citing insufficient guarantees against Russia's advances. Even if we imagine that there is some kind of Olympic truce for 2 weeks and everyone stands still, tell me, Zelensky said, I told Emmanuel, who can guarantee that Russia will do not use this time to send your forces to our territory. AFP, there is a risk that while we are not hitting them back and not stopping them with artillery fire, even in areas where they are advancing, there is still a risk that they are bringing in more high-class military equipment heavy on our territory.
The US assesses that Russia may have launched an anti-space weapon last week. The United States has assessed that Russia likely launched an anti-space weapon last week that was close to and capable of attacking a US government satellite orbiting nearby, US Ambassador Robert Wood said at the United Nations on Monday. This is not the first time Russia has launched anti-space weapons, designed to disable or destroy satellites. But the last time they did so was in 2022, said Wood, who serves as the United States alternate representative for special political affairs at the United Nations. The launch comes at a time when the US and allies are increasingly concerned about Russia's efforts to develop space nuclear weapons capable of destroying commercial and government satellites. On May 16, Russia launched a satellite into low Earth orbit that the United States assesses are likely counter-space weapons capable of attacking other satellites in low Earth orbit, Wood said in a speech before the vote on the resolution of the United Nations Security Council drafted by the drafters. Russia on outer space security. Russia has deployed this new anti-space weapon into the same orbit as a US government satellite. Wood added that the May 16th launch follows satellite launches. Russia's previous satellites are likely to be space countermeasures systems reaching low Earth orbit in 2019 and 2022. Pentagon spokesman Major General Pat Ryder said Tuesday the assessments of the US about the Russian satellite shows additional features similar to previously deployed anti-space payloads from 2019 and 2022. Mr. Wood called this launch worrying and said it undermined Russia's claim that it wants to ensure security in outer space. A U.S. official told CNN that the North American Aerospace Defense Command and North American Command monitored the launch when it takes place. No specific evidence was provided for the above allegations. Russia has not commented on this information. The launch took place at a time when the US and its allies were increasingly concerned about Russia's ability to develop space nuclear weapons capable of destroying commercial satellites, as well as the government. In February, the US government accused Russia of considering deploying nuclear weapons in space. Afterwards, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that Moscow has always been strongly opposed to the deployment of nuclear weapons in space.
Ukrainian officials say Russian forces used prisoners in border town as human shields. A Ukrainian official said Russian forces detained dozens of civilians in the border town of Vovchansk, while the region's top police officer accused them of using detainees as human shields. Moscow has stepped up its offensive in northern Ukraine. Last week they launched the most surprising operation in 2 years of war, crossing the northern border in a new attempt to capture Kharkiv. The country's second most populous city, Vovchansk, in the northern Kharkiv region, faced a fierce attack, as Russian forces declared control of surrounding villages, forcing civilians to flee. The cross-border attack comes during a difficult month for Kiev and marks another example of what's going on for Ukrainians this year. Their forces were spread thin, with much less artillery than the Russians, extremely weak air defenses, and above all, a lack of soldiers. Their plight is made worse by dry weather, which allows Russian mechanized units to move more easily. Some analysts predict the Russians will expand their border attacks west to the Sumy region, which has seen raids by Russian special forces for months. Serhiy Bolvinov, head of the investigation department of Kharkiv Regional Police, told the broadcaster Suspil News Photo on Friday that Russian soldiers kept about 40 civilians in a basement, near the command headquarters. These people were being interrogated and those conducting the interrogations called themselves FSB employees, Bolvinov said, referring to Russia's internal security agency and adding that those detained were being used as human shields. He said those detained were mostly elderly people, who did not want to evacuate until the last minute, and were arrested when they finally decided to leave for Ukrainian-controlled territories. Klimenko said on his Telegram channel, "We know about the first cases of the Russian army executing civilians," adding, "In particular, one of the residents of Vovchansk tried to escape on foot, refusing to obey the orders of the invaders. The Russians killed him. Police investigators have opened a criminal case citing violations of the rules of war," he said, adding that evacuations were still underway in that area as of Thursday. 5. Nearly 10,000 people were evacuated in the Kharkiv region due to the new Russian offensive, the head of the Kharkiv Regional Military Administration, Oleh Sinyehubov, said in an update on Telegram on Saturday morning. The evacuation comes 7 days after Russia's surprise cross-border attack on northern Ukraine, which began on the morning of May 10th. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky last week postponed all upcoming international visits as the country grapples with the new offensive. In an interview with AFP news agency broadcast on Friday, Mr. Zelensky said Russia's offensive in the Kharkiv region is not stable, it is controlled. Mr. said that Ukrainian forces are controlling the Russian army's infiltration routes into the area, but Russian activities continue. He also said that there may be some Russian attacks in the area and emphasized the necessity of the Patriot missile system to push Russian troops out of Kharkov. Video come here is the end. Hello and see you in the next videos and story of 5 Minutes Discovery.